In this episode of r/EntitledParents, this crazy dad forces his son to study for an upcoming test in the bath. I have to study in a bathtub. So, I have an exam tomorrow, and I wanted to study, so I sat in my chair and started. Not even 3 minutes later, my dad came in. He wanted to play CSGO on my PC, so I had to get in my bed. He started playing, and as always, he started to swear. I asked him to be quiet, and he said, "My house, my rules." So, I went in the bathroom, the only quiet place in our house. I'm now in the bathtub. What should I do? Now look guys, this is definitely one of the wildest entitled parent stories that I've read. There's a lot to unpack here, but the comments of this post actually reveal a lot about what's going on. One commenter says, "Your dad is a selfish child." And OP has actually replied, "Yes, he is. The keyboard and mouse are gonna be oily again." What, oily? Very oily. That's weird. Someone else comments, "My house, my rules." Well, how about my room, my laptop, my rules? But OP says, "I bought it for you." I guess you can't really do too much about that. Right, he bought it for you to use in your sanctuary in peace and quiet. He can't just take that away from you just because he's an adult, especially if you're doing something important like studying. The power trip some parents are on is unbelievable. I completely agree with this comment. OP says, "Just had a huge argument with both parents, locked myself in my room. They're threatening to call the police. What on earth? Download an aimbot, get him VAC banned, delete the aimbot. Then he can enjoy some non-VAC lobbies. But it's OP's Steam account, so he can't do that." Now, there are a few more comments where people are suggesting that OP get a job or try and move out, stuff like that. But it's very clear as you read more of these comments that OP is actually quite young and can't really do that, and that his parents are extremely controlling. Look at this. So, somebody says your dad should get his own laptop. Completely makes sense. I mean, geez, he doesn't even respect your privacy. Maybe he didn't want you to study. OP says he has to know all my passwords. This is messed up. Are you 18 yet? It might be worth it to apply for dorm living. But OP says, "I'm not 18 yet," and that is part of the problem. What do you do when you're not 18 and your parents are this controlling and entitled? That is crazy. And then finally, to sum this entire story up, what the heck? Their child's education should always come first for a parent, not in our house. That is insane. Like, at first, I'm going to be honest, it seemed a little far-fetched, this story. Really? Sending your kid to go and study in the bath? But the more I read these comments from OP explaining what's going on, wow, this dad is mental. Now moving on to our second entitled parent story. My entitled parents took COVID tests, but won't show me the results in advance of their visit with my toddler. My parents are in their 60s, and my spouse and I are in our 30s. We live a state apart, about 6 hours drive. My spouse and I have a 2-year-old who is not yet eligible for a COVID vaccine, and we've been taking every precaution we can to keep her safe, while also holding down our jobs. My parents are both vaccinated and boosted, but regularly take risks that we do not. Going out to eat at restaurants, recreational travel, not wearing masks in places that don't require it, etc. On their most recent visit, my mum had been hosting a professional workshop that involved some up-close, hands-on instruction, and she informed us at dinner that she decided to take her mask off as she was instructing students since it was so hard to teach with it on. She said this as she held our kid on her lap and fed them food off her fork. My parents were due to visit today, and we'd asked them to get a PCR test beforehand to make sure everyone was safe, especially our kid. They went to get tests on New Year's Eve, complaining to us all the while about what a pain it was to go to an urgent care centre and sit for hours, potentially being exposed. They could have made an appointment earlier, since we've been planning this visit for weeks, by the way. They arrived at their hotel yesterday evening, and in the process of opening a discussion about plans for their visit, I texted them yesterday evening to ask if they could please send us copies of their test results. At 10 a.m. today, about 14 hours later, I received a long email from my mum, effectively saying, "No, we won't show you our test results. How dare you think that we'd make the trip here if we were sick? If you can't trust us to that extent, you shouldn't let us into your home anyway." Over the course of the next few hours, my wife and I both sent them digital copies of our recent COVID tests and emphasized that this was a pretty normal thing for people to be doing these days, and that we'd really like to see them, but we'd like to see the test results, Please. No dice. My parents have never been so insulted, can't believe that we don't trust them, etc. According to both my parents, yes, they have negative results, but no, we can't see them. I had a phone conversation with them in which I told them that I love them, explained that we're trying to look out for the health of our kid, and hoped they would reconsider. They claimed they would never have made the drive if we knew that we would ask them that. My mum cried. My dad was angry. In their own defense, they also brought up how risky it was for them to make the trip as older people, and the risk that I've taken traveling to other parts of the world. By the way, this is pre-COVID, and the time I smoked weed when I was 17, among other things, my god. If they have negative results, it would be the work of 15 seconds to send us proof. I think I believe them, but their reaction makes me wonder more than I would have before. As far as I know, they're now driving 6 sad hours back home. No visit, no time with grandkiddo. I feel terrible for making people I love feel terrible, and I'm pretty sure I did so today. But this is pretty weird and entitled, right? Yeah, OP, it is. Just a bit. That's ridiculous. I'm sorry, but your parents have to be hiding something. If they have taken the test like they've said, and they are negative like they've said, then yeah, they would just send the picture, wouldn't they? It takes 15 seconds. It's not a lack of trust. That is just an unbelievable thing to say. For me personally, I went round to my friend's house on New Year's Eve, and everyone prior to that took an LFT and posted photos in our group chat showing they were negative, just so everyone felt comfortable. It's not a big deal. It doesn't show a lack of trust. Send the picture. It takes 15 seconds, and have a nice time with your grandkid. Now moving on to our third story. On my 21st birthday, my mother tried to act like she was my bride. This is a roller coaster. Anyone who's seen my original post knows the level of infantilizing insanity my mother has towards me. She practically wanted me to be attached to her hip and wanted me to be perpetually a child. This is only one of the many nasty things she did. I don't intend to make many posts, but this story I feel like I want to get out separately from my original post. Now guys, just to explain briefly what happened in the first post, in the original, here is a little TLDR. My crazy, controlling mother clinged to and infantilized me all my life, so I moved away. Then refused to come home for Christmas because she couldn't accept my girlfriend, so she stalked me and then called the police on me, claiming I was a drug dealer to try and ruin my holiday. She got arrested on Christmas Day, then my father divorced her, and no one wants anything to do with her now. So, there we go. It was late 2012, and I was turning 21. I was the last person in my friend circle to reach that age. So we decided the best way to enjoy my birthday was to have it at a local bar. My mother didn't like this idea because she didn't think it's appropriate, but the rest of the family told me to enjoy the day the way I'd like. So I decided the bar was what I wanted. My mother did call me a few times, asking me to change my mind, but I wasn't going to. Every single birthday I had while living with my parents, my mother made all about her. She always dressed up like she was going to extravagant parties and always made herself the center of attention. She hovered over me every time I blew out the candles on my cakes. And she had to be in every photo taken of me. I stayed living in my parents' house as long as I could stand it to save money. And believe me, I was saving every spare cent in a savings account. Now it was time for my 21st birthday, and I was determined to not let her ruin it or make it about her. One of my friends brought a small chocolate cake, and it only had 1 candle on it in the shape of a 21. Some of my favourite tunes were playing on the jukebox, and I was enjoying gin and tonic. Then my mother showed up. She pranced in, wearing what looked like a wedding dress of some sort, and her hair was done up in what I think would be best described as Disney Cinderella style. Her face was caked in makeup to try and not look almost 50. And my dad walked in behind her, wearing his church suit. He didn't look happy. My mother pranced to me and latched onto my arm. And when I say pranced, I mean pranced. She had a hop with every step, but I pulled away from her and made her let go. I adamantly said I was not going to be holding her arm, and I was going to enjoy my birthday the way I see fit. She didn't like hearing that and still wanted my arm. Every time I got up to try and do anything, she latched onto me and tried to parade me around. One guy there I didn't know made a joke that we looked like such a happy couple. My mother blushed like she was my girlfriend or something. That made me snap, and I called out what the guy said as disgusting and that I wasn't marrying my crazy mother. My mother then gave me a shocked and then saddened look, like her inner world had just crumbled. Then she turned on the waterworks. Everyone was staring. I just walked into the men's bathroom. Thankfully, she couldn't follow me in there. My dad walked in a few minutes later and said my mother had calmed down and it was safe to come out. But she'd planted herself in my seat at the table and was told to move when it was time to do the cake, but she didn't want to. Thankfully, my dad made her get up, and my friends made sure to sit in places that kept my mother from sitting close to me, or being directly in my line of sight. My best friend lit the cake, and before I could blow it out, I noticed my mother was hovering creepily close behind me. I snapped and told her she wasn't going to do this to me again, and to sit down or go away. She started making a scene, and my dad had to make her stop. Lots of people around the bar were looking at my mother and laughing. She started doing that kind of angry squinting, where you expect tears any second, then just sat back down. My friends took pictures of me and made sure my mother wasn't in a single one of them. Not for lack of my mother trying, anyway. My mother finally hit her breaking point when I got up to start dancing with a girl while a live band played. We picked that day to have the party because a local band was there in the evening, and they were playing some great classic rock. I started dancing with a nice redhead girl when my mother suddenly grabbed me by the arm and started forcibly trying to dance with me. I had to pry her off, and then she screamed at me so loudly my ears were hurting and the band stopped playing. She tried to grab me by the ear like she used to when she scolded me, but I slapped her hand away. She screamed at me that I was embarrassing her on her day, so I retorted that it wasn't her day, it was never her day, it was mine. She yelled that she gave birth to me and that made it her day. I said that wasn't how it worked, and that this was my day and my day alone. And then my friends all backed me up. The band was even telling my mother off. One even called her a hag, if I recall correctly. Well deserved. Suddenly, she was looking everywhere at everybody, and you could see it finally click to her just how much of a scene she was making. I don't know if you've ever seen everyone in a bar go dead silent while staring at one person, but they did. And one of the employees just pointed to the door and told her to leave. The girl I'd been dancing with, seemingly on cue, also grabbed my arm and told me to just ignore my mother and have a good time. My mother then had a mental breakdown and ran out of the bar loudly, crying like a girl who just had her prom day ruined. My dad didn't follow. Instead, he just ordered another beer. The rest of the evening was a blast, because after the bar, we all went back to my best friend's house and played old video games. Drunk Mario Kart is surprisingly fun. The next time I saw my mother, she acted like the events of my 21st birthday never happened. And on my 22nd birthday, I celebrated the same way at the same bar. My mother showed up for that one too, but she didn't try and pull any of the same rubbish she did before. And she walked out in the middle of the party when I was dancing with my then girlfriends. Later that year, I moved away, and my mother hasn't attended any of my birthdays since. Alright, now, it's pretty clear that your mother is a crazy woman, but I don't really care. I don't want to talk about that. Can we talk for a second about Drunk Mario Kart, please? Because that is elite. Listen, if you've never played before, this is what you do. You get 3 of your pals and you sit down and you prepare for the race of a lifetime. Everybody gets a beer or any drink in front of them in a full glass, and what you have to do is before finishing the race, you have to have finished your drink. Now, whilst you're drinking, you cannot have your hands on the Wii remote or the steering wheel, whatever you use. You got to put it down, have your drink, make sure that's finished before you cross the finish line after 3 laps. If not, you forfeited. Now, the person who comes last, if you will do it correctly and finish your drinks by the time you cross the line, has to do a shot. And there you go. That is Drunk Mario Kart. Play it now and enjoy it. Anyway, guys, that is going to do it for this episode of r/EntitledParents. Really hope you enjoyed this one. If you did, and you want to see more from me, from Entitled Parents straight away, check out this video on screen. If you're new to the channel, subscribe, and I'm going to go and play some Drunk Mario Kart. See you all very soon.